So I've been on YouTube for a couple years now, and in that time, I've come across lots of videos giving interview advice and interview tips. And I feel that some of it is not only unhelpful, but it could lose you a good job offer. And my job as an interview coach is to get you to pass your interview with flying colors. And so I'm gonna address some of these. One is stick to your core skills. So I saw this on a video about answering a very popular interview question a few years ago, and the person recommended that you should only stick to your core skills when you're answering interview questions. So not sharing who you are, hobbies or interests, because the interviewer doesn't care. And I 100% disagree. So while your core professional skills should be front and center for obvious reasons, and of course you want to communicate them in a way that is clear and engaging, you still need to be you. I don't agree with not sharing hobbies. Try to keep them relevant, of course, but you know what? I've shared in interviews for 20 years that I like baking. It's on my CV or resume if you're in the US, and I've worked for lots of large brands and some small ones as well as coaching clients to join big companies and interviewing over 4,500 people. I can tell you that interviewers normally respond well to points that humanize you, because interviewers will invite all candidates that have the right core skills or potential skills to an interview. So something else has to set you apart. Just don't go too far under the bracket of bringing your whole self to an interview. Two is to avoid answering the salary question. So the salary question is, what are your salary expectations, or what's your desired salary? So I answer it in this video. So I did this video when I first started this channel, and I noticed that there were quite a few videos that were recommending things like techniques like the briefcase technique or other pivoting techniques that basically avoid or circumvent the question instead of just answering it. So try to give fairly straight answers in your interview so your interviewer doesn't get confused, and also so they can remember what you said and it makes you memorable. So my view on this is just to give straight answers, because you want to set your salary expectations much earlier in the process anyway. So you're not having to answer a question like this with answers like, before I can discuss my salary, can I just tell you about all the great things I've done? So it then justifies how much you're about to ask for. The way I recommend you get results is to discuss that beforehand. So you would have had that discussion before the interview. Plus, your interview performance will be that justification. So if you've done all the prep, that's my view, a straight talking approach. It works for me, it works for my clients, and for loads of my subscribers, you guys too. You leave me messages all the time showing me the results that you get. So I like to keep things straightforward and simple. Use every opportunity to sell yourself. So I love recommending that candidates do this. Utilize all the relevant moments to kind of sneak in your skills, but just the relevant moments. So sometimes an interviewer just wants a straight answer to their question. They don't want a long story about an achievement you had that isn't really related to the question. So sometimes an interviewer is trying to assess something specific, and you might think that you know where they're going or what they're trying to assess, but you can be wrong. And when a candidate is trying to sell themselves, instead of giving the interviewer the information that they need in order to make a hiring decision or assess a candidate, they can't then consider that candidate. Plus, it's just annoying to interviewers. So think about if you've ever asked someone a straightforward question and you got a long response and it doesn't include the answer to the question you actually asked. Annoying, right? So 4 is always negotiate salary. So as I mentioned earlier, I have interviewed thousands of candidates to date. I've been a candidate myself hundreds of times in interviewing processes over the last 20 years in my career, and I've done lots of coaching, and I confidently can say I don't always negotiate salary. A lot of people are not comfortable negotiating, and while the skill is very powerful, and while I agree that if you don't ask, you don't always get, I also think that you don't always need to do this. So this is what I say. Being clear about salary expectations up front, like I mentioned earlier, mean that you've already calculated how much you need to earn to comfortably afford the things that you need, plus a bit extra for comfort and rest and relaxation, and of course also for when things go wrong. So that extra is subjective, it's different for everyone. So let's say that I need 70K. So I put that on an application form. So people only get back to me if they're paying 70K or more, and they invite me to an interview. So at that point, if I'm still not 100% clear on what the salary is, I will ask them before I agree to the interview invitation. And I only attend if they tell me that it's 70K or more, because in that example, that's the salary I'm looking for. So then when you get a job offer, they shouldn't be offering you less. Normally what will happen is they'll offer you what you asked for, or sometimes more. That sometimes happens as well. It's a nice surprise when it does. But if I know that 70K is the amount that I'll be happy with, I don't always play the negotiation game. I'm happy when the offer comes through, and that's it. I keep it simple. So there's this view that if you know what they're paying, then you should gouge them for as much as possible. And not everyone is comfortable with this. So, if you are not someone comfortable with negotiation, set your interviewer or recruiter or company's expectations early in the process, just way down in the beginning of the process, and then do not drop below that amount. Now, that's not to say that negotiation isn't a brilliant skill, but there are other ways to get a salary that you are happy with. 5, if you're asked a question you don't agree with, challenge it. So there's lots of different ways that this can give the wrong impression, but I'll share a real life example. So let's say an interviewer asks you, what makes you the best candidate for this role? And you say, and I've heard this, you say, what do you think makes me the best candidate for this role? So I was interviewing with a sales director once years ago, and we had this answer, and it was a really awkward moment because I think that the candidate, thought that they might be demonstrating their kind of sales technique. They didn't. It came across a little bit awkward, potentially a bit over-rehearsed, and a little bit lazy, like they were trying to kind of skirt around the question. So there is a way to do this without coming across as confrontational. So you can give your answer to this question and end with something that asks the interviewer why they selected you for an interview in the first place. So you can end with something like, so those are the reasons why I feel that I would be the best candidate for the role. Were there other strengths that I had that prompted you to invite me for an interview? Now, if you're getting value here, then leave a comment and a like. It's hugely helpful to the channel. And if you're one of those that has had results, then you can also buy me a coffee. There's a link to that in the description box below. 6 is suggest improvements. So I saw a coach on LinkedIn giving advice about someone that had not got interview feedback and went to the company with a list of things that they could improve and then got an interview. And the candidate sent this message to a team in the company that was then redirected to the relevant manager. Now, I don't know the ins and outs of this story, but I've worked in HR for a long time, partnering with lots of managers and senior management in the business. And I can tell you that in most cases, managers will not necessarily appreciate candidates sending a list of critiques to the whole team in the business for a candidate that ultimately wants to work for their team. You don't know whether the thing that you're critiquing is something designed by and created by the manager that they may have spent years building, and whether or not that might be a sensitive project or service to critique. You have to imagine that, so let's say that you were hiring an assistant and they were unsuccessful, and a week later you got an email from a different team, a marketing team saying that the candidate sent a list of things potentially wrong with something you designed to a generic inbox that everyone has access to, but they also still want an interview. So some managers will appreciate the feedback, but some will not. And that's the reality. I normally recommend avoiding things that could potentially insult the person that you want to work with or risk annoying them unnecessarily when there are tons of better ways to secure an offer. So a quick caveat to this is if the job includes coming up with new ideas, so they want someone to do that, then this can work really well. Or if it's a senior position or there's something to indicate that this is a good idea. If there's no indication that this would be a good idea, then I don't recommend it. Position yourself for leadership. I think leadership skills give you something very unique that affects every other area of your life in a positive way. Leadership skills are a game changer. However, Not everyone is attracted to leadership. Sometimes a motivational meme is just that, and it should just be left where it is. So my advice is position yourself for leadership if you have an understanding of what's required and the responsibilities that come with it. So that might mean that you need to speak to people that you know in leadership at work or otherwise to gain a comprehensive understanding of what you might be signing up for. Giving impressive interview answers that would position you for a leadership role aren't always right. So sometimes a candidate might answer questions like, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time or 10 years' time? I see myself in a management or leadership role. But they don't really want a management role or a leadership role. It just sounds like an impressive answer. Don't say this if you don't want that, because you will be expected to perform in the role at a level that matches with what you said in the interview. So just be really careful about what you say. If leadership doesn't appeal to you or you're not sure, you can simply say that you see yourself staying at that level for some time. You want to get settled into the role, learn all of the different aspects because you're passionate about that role as it is at a junior or mid-level. Don't mention leadership if that's not what you want or you're not sure what you want. If you've never been in a leadership position before, it's a different ballgame, and in some cases it's a lifestyle change. So working late or weekends is often expected, and I've seen lots of people just burn out because not everyone is right for that type of role. Now, if you want to be fully prepared, there are some free but very powerful guides in the description box below. One is an interview prep guide to make sure that you follow all the correct steps before your interview regarding interview prep, and the other covers the top 20 interview questions and answers. So I'll link both of them in the video description below this video. Now, if you found this helpful, leave a comment and a like. I'm looking forward to your opinions, and I will see you in the next video.